Klar?
Ready as I'll ever be.
Okay, welcome to this new episode of our Tasting with Friends. We're talking about the July subscription coffee. And for those of you who don't know what our subscription coffee is, it's the monthly subscription where we send out a chosen coffee that I choose to our friendly subscribers. And we normally will charge your Visa card on the 27th of each month, and then send out the coffee the first Wednesday of the month. So 27th of June we'll charge you, and then the first Wednesday of July we'll send you the coffee. And it normally takes about a week to get the coffee because we're sending with normal mail. So with me today, Glenn Karlsen. Glenn is the guy who was actually filming. Isn't that weird?
Multitasking.
Multitasking, yes. So Glenn has been making videos for us for about a year now. And also
2.5, 3?
2.5 years.
Since 20.
Almost 3 years. Also editing a lot of the videos that I'm shooting while I'm traveling. Still haven't been to Origin.
Not yet.
Not yet. But you like coffee?
I do.
And what do you do daily?
I always make a V60 for me and my better half every day before we head off to work, and then at the office I have a little special brew called Steep Shot that I use there.
Ooh, so Glenn is also consulting for Steep Shot, which is a new Norwegian invention, which is a pressurized immersion brew that'll be out very soon.
This is Steep Shot, and it's super simple.
You filmed the Kickstarter, didn't you?
Yeah, I filmed it. Tim was in front of the camera as normal.
Yes.
Yeah.
And did you manage to fund everything?
We did. Our goal was 250. I think we ended up with 350 Norwegian kroner. So we're really pleased with that. So if any of you are backers, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So enough chit chat. Check out Glenn's work at your website. It's
curlyfied.com.
Curlyfied.com.
Link about here now, I reckon.
Yeah. So let's talk about the July subscription coffee, because this is the most exciting time of the year. It's when we get the fresh crop Kenyan coffees that were harvested in a little bit earlier last year. Normally they harvest around November, December. Last year it was October, November, also a little bit December. So most of the coffees we bought are harvested in November. That's just because I went down to Kenya in the end of February to select the lots that I wanted, and those were the coffees that had come in at that time.
Ah, okay.
So how it works in Kenya is like we normally buy from the cooperatives, and they will have a lot of different lots of coffee because they buy coffee cherries from the farmers that are surrounding a washing station. And then they mix all those cherries together. Of course they take out the unripened stuff, and then they process the coffee in one batch, and they will dry the coffee in one batch, and then store it as a batch. And then the next week it's a new batch. So that means if I'm buying coffee from Karagoto or something, I might be able to cup through or taste coffees from several different weeks, meaning, and they call it outturns. So one batch is not necessarily tasting the same as the second one.
Because of the mixture, or because of the smaller farms, basically. Yeah. Okay, cool.
So washing station might have, let's say, 500 members that are delivering cherries to the washing station. And you know, week number 1 maybe these farmers delivered, and next week these farmers delivered, and then third week maybe there's a mix of them. So it depends a little bit. Also, of course, there's different ripening stages, and you know, many things that will affect the flavor. So what I normally do, and you can check that out in a video we made I think last year in our YouTube channel, is I go down to the exporter's office and taste through, you know, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of lots. Of course I ask for certain cooperatives that we have been buying from for several years, and then I basically select the best ones.
Cool. So you sort of, do you then blend it yourself, so it sort of becomes sort of like a blended scotch? They blend it for your flavouring?
We keep it separate.
Okay.
Yeah, so each lot we always keep separate, sell separately. And that's the beauty of a Kenyan system, is that they not only does one batch become one separate lot, they also separate different qualities from that lot. So the bigger beans, which is the double A, which is normally what we buy. You have Peaberries, which are the smaller beans. You have AB, which are, you know, medium screen size. And then you have the commercial stuff that we're not interested in. So one batch of coffee can have several different qualities as well. which is very interesting. So that's why we always keep it separate, and it's much easier to roast when you have a more even bean size, of course.
Okay.
So the coffee we're tasting today is from a cooperative that we have bought from many years ago, back in 2008, I think, when I first started going to Kenya. This was one of the cooperatives that I bought from. The cooperative name is Rumukia, but the washing station, because a cooperative might have different washing stations. The washing station is Kiawamururu, so in Norwegian, Kiawamururu.
Kiawamururu.
Yes, and it's a Peaberry, so it means very small beans, but they're actually more easy to roast, I think, because they're round in shape, and they can be a little bit more intense, more full-bodied, and not as acidic as the double A's, but very fruity.
So it's more even in size than the Peaberry, so it's more easy to roast evenly?
Yeah, definitely. And also because of its round shape, whereas normal beans will have a flat surface and then an oval on the backside. So as always with Kenyan coffees, they always taste better when they're cooled down. And they're also really good to use for making iced coffees. We taste? It's been such a long time since I had fresh crop Kenyan coffee. It's been a year actually. What do you think, Glenn?
It's intense. It has loads of flavor, but it's clear in a sense.
Oh, it's very transparent. It's quite easy to pick out for me. Rose hips, like bang, rose hips.
My palate isn't that trained, but there's some I was going to say not sourness, but there's some fruity sourness in a sense.
Yeah, I mean, Kenyan coffees are very high in acidity, but also very sweet. So sour, I would normally use, like let's say you make lemonade and you just squeeze lemon into water and you drink it. Then it's sour.
Yeah.
If you then put sugar in, you still have the same acidity level, but you have also sweetness. So we kind of describe that as more acidic or you know, fruity or something like that. But it's definitely high in acidity.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of these. And because it's an SL, it's a mix of different varieties. SL28 is the traditional in this area. Of course, the farmers also planted SL34 at one point. Some of them planted the Ruiru 11, which is a hybrid that is resistant and not so tasty. And then recently, for the last 5 years, 5 to 8 years maybe, they've been starting to plant Batian, which is also a hybrid. That is resistant against leaf rust, but it's also quite tasty. So this will be a mix of different varieties, but mainly SL28. So when you see people selling Kenyan coffee, it normally just says SL28, but the truth is it's always a mix of different varieties.
Okay.
Unless it comes from a farm that only has SL28.
Oh, that's amazing.
So sweet when it cools down.
Yeah.
And I get a little bit of raisins. You could have like a, you know, when you make the prunes or plums and you heat them up and they become like compote.
Yeah.
That kind of viscous fruit.
Yeah, like it's. I'm not bad at this, but there's some like the way I can point it out is sort of like the sweetness is round in a sense.
Yeah.
So it's not like white sugar is sort of like pointed in a sense. I can't describe it any clearer than or any better, but itself feels different. More like brown sugar or molasses or something like that.
So word of mouth says that there's a lot of phosphoric acid in Kenyan coffees, and that's a type of acid that they use in Coca-Cola to make it more delicious. So you know, that might be the sensation you're feeling, almost like an umami thing. Like it's very mouth coating and
yeah, close to umami. That's a good comparison.
Interestingly enough, this is the same varieties that we sent out last month, but they were grown in Colombia at Finca Tamana, so SL28. And if you remember, if you had that coffee last month, much less acidity. Still fruit, much less acidity, so it becomes more like a heavy-bodied coffee. This is much more vibrant, fresh.
I could barely compare that. Oh, because I had that I think I actually had that this morning. And it's very different. Like insanely different. What's the altitude like for the difference between these two?
Same.
Same?
Yeah, around 1700 meters. for both coffees.
So
But
it's just environment difference, basically.
yeah, the cool climate in Kenya is really cold at night, and you know, moderately hot during the daytime. But also normally the trees around these areas are really, really old, so you'll see like trunks like this. And what they do is they just stump the trees every 5-7 years and let the new shoots grow up, and then you get fruit on the new shoots. But so it's not uncommon to see trees that are planted in the 1930s, 1940s in these areas, and they just continue to produce. Also, the soil, although they're using a lot of mineral fertilizer and they have to spray the trees a lot because they're not resistant. They say that the soil has a big impact as well. Well, I debate that because I'm converted to soil biology and kind of that understanding. But we don't really know. But
it's a complex thing. Yeah, like you picking up one single individual thing that made the whole difference in that bean.
Yeah. It's difficult.
Yeah.
But anyway, the Kenyan coffees are famous for being very, very high quality, and part of it is obviously the SL28 varieties. Part of it is the excellent processing that they do on these washing stations, where they use very old equipment and they use water to grade and wash the coffees. So constantly they're kind of separating the heavy beans from the lighter beans, the big beans from the small beans. While the coffee is drying very carefully on raised beds, they're sorting out all the defects, and it's constantly sorting, separating, and then they ultimately separate the bean sizes. So for me this is the model on how to produce excellent quality coffee, and that's why we're trying to implement these systems on other farms that we're working with.
I was just about to ask, I remember editing a video of you about where they washed the beans, and it's sort of like the way it flowed, or it stopped at certain points.
Yeah,
to sort it.
They kind of put like wood on a canal with water running, and then the heavy beans will stop at the wood, but the lighter ones will float over.
So the less like the A grade or whatever it was called would stop at the first one.
Yeah, so that means also one batch of coffee doesn't only make different bean sizes, but also different grades depending on the density of the beans. Cool, so we got some comments on the last video if we could recommend some way to brew this coffee. And I mean, I'm a believer that you can brew it any way you want, as long as you learn how to use the brewing equipment. And I just did a training last week with a new employee where we did a French press, we did an AeroPress and V60 side by side, but we managed to make the same extraction and the same TDS, so the same strength. And we couldn't really tell which was better or not. They were equally good. Obviously the French press had a little bit more of this kind of viscous mouthfeel. For me, these coffees are really nice when they're very transparent and light, so I prefer to brew them with a V60 because of the paper filter, or some kind of filter brewer where you get a lot more clarity. And I do recommend maybe a little bit lower dose. We normally recommend 65 grams per liter. Maybe on these coffees, because they're very soluble, you can go down maybe to 62 grams or 60 grams per liter, and then you'll get a lot more of that transparency, but still fruitiness and sweetness and so on. So try to go down to 60 grams per liter, and if you think that's a little too weak, then just grind a little bit finer. But normally on Kenyan coffees, they're very, very soluble because they're very dense. So let's say your standard setting is a certain point on the grinder with a Central American coffee. I would normally go 1 to 2 steps a little bit coarser with a Kenyan coffee because they're very, very soluble. So with a Brazilian coffee, a lower grown, I would probably go a little bit finer than my standard settings because they're not as soluble. So play around with it, but don't be afraid to adjust your grind a little bit coarser when you brew these Kenyan coffees. When it comes to water, Oslo water is the best water in the world. Very, very soft. So I do recommend the soft water. If you have a TDS reading on a bottle or something, it should be below 100. And careful with the calcium carbonate levels. They need to be quite low because they neutralize acidity. So if you brew this coffee with tap water from Denmark, it will taste earthy and heavy and bitter, not fruity at all.
So just see if your water bottle is full, like water kettle is full of like what's it called, calcium?
Lime scale, yeah.
Lime scale, yeah. Like white coating that it has there. Just that means that the water you have on your tap is. You might want to buy a bottle of water for this quality thing. Every day might not be a difference.
I didn't know you were a water expert.
You know, I might have edited a few videos where I've heard that sentence from a certain video like maybe 20 times.
Yeah. You can see inside your water bottle, if it's very chalky inside, you have a lot of calcium in the water. Yeah, so I really hope you enjoy this coffee. It's a small lot that we bought. Basically, a Japanese company that bought a full container and then a couple of bags left for us. So we had 10 bags of this, meaning around 600 kilos. We're sending some to Poland and then we're sending it out to our subscribers. And in my opinion, probably the best Kenyan lot we bought this year. So
will there be any in store?
Maybe we'll have some leftovers in the store, but I'm not so sure we will have that many beans left. We'll see.
I'll have to resubscribe then.
Yes. Well, I hope you enjoy, and if you want to check out more about Kenya, we have 2 videos out. One about coffee processing in Kenya, and the second one was from last year, my Kenyan trip, where I was buying coffees in Kenya. Hope to see you next time. Ciao.
Bye. Cool.
Cool.
Great.
Thank you, Glenn.
You're welcome.
I'll let you turn it off, okay?
Yeah.
Kiawamururu.
I'm gonna have to have another cup of that because that was bloody amazing.